Hi! Are you curious about the body structure of the worms and how they move? And I am discussing to you the Triploblastic Acylomate body plan. Now, let's talk about the acylomate. This means these animals don't have a body cavity called acylum, which is like fluid-filled space that separates the organs. Instead, everything is packed together without much space in between. It's like if you pack all your clothes tightly into a suitcase without any compartments. So when we say triploblastic acylomate body plans, we're talking about animals with 3 layers of cells in their bodies. But they don't have that fluid-filled space between their organs like some other animals do. They are more compact and simple in their body structure. Overall, triploblastic acylomate animals are organized with 3 cell layers but lack of body cavity, making them efficient in their designs but without the same complexity as animals without body cavities. Now, let's break it down to phylum Platymelticus. The term used in science for flatworms, which are amazing animals that inhabit in a variety of habitats worldwide, is Platyhelminthes. Although not all flatworms are as named, they do have a flatter body from the animal's worm species.
Well, it's gonna get a little bit
Allow ourselves to start by discussing their basic composition. Although flatworms have a head and a tail, their bodies are basic and lack complicated functions like a circulatory or real digestive system. Rather, they have a single orifice that functions as the anus and the mouth. This implies that trash exists the same hole that food enters, which seems a little strange. Now, one of the most interesting things about flatworm is their ability to regenerate. If they lose a body part, they can often grow it back, which is quite handy for survival in the wild. Flatworms come in different types, including free-living and parasitic species. Free-living flatworms like planarians can be found in freshwater environments where they glide along using tiny hairs called cilia. They're pretty chill creatures and mostly feed on small organisms and organic matter. Despite their simple bodies, flatworms have managed to adapt to various ecological niches and play important roles in ecosystems. So imagine you were at the beach, digging in the sand, and suddenly you came across a long, stretchy ribbon-like creature that might just be a nemerchan, a type of worm found in the ocean. Now, these ribbon worms are pretty cool. They come in all sizes from just a few millimeters to several meters long. They're like a spaghetti of the sea. What makes them really interesting is their hunting style. Nemerchans have the unique tool called proboscis. It's like a long, stretchy straw that they can shoot out to catch their prey. When they spot something tasty, like a small shrimp or worm, they shoot out their proboscis. which is armed with little harpoons or toxin to catch the immobilized meal. And now, let's deep dive in to Phylum Acanthocephala. Imagine you were a group of worms that are likely tiny ninjas like spiny heads. That's Phylum Acanthocephala. For you, these tiny-headed worms are highly unique in the animal realm. These spiky structures help them latch onto the intestines of their host animals, which can range from fish and birds to mammals like pigs and humans. They have a cylindrical body with a head that is armed with the retractable hooks or spine, hence the name thorny-headed. Infectious can cause swelling, obstructions, and in extreme situation, even death. And now, exploring to the Phylum Luricifera. Phylum Luricifera can be described as microscopic animals that live in deep water and resemble little armored suits. Let us tackle the Phylum Priapulida. Phylum Priapulida is a class of aquatic animals that resembles a hybrid between a worm and a sea cucumber. Known by the name Priapulids worms, these peculiar creatures are found in the marine settings worldwide, especially in the muddy or sandy deposit of the ocean floor. Now, the distinct body shape of Priapulids worms is what set them apart. In relation to their prey, Priapulida worms are carnivores, which means they devour other tiny marine animals such as mollusks, worms, and crustaceans. They lack a sophisticated network of organs such as a real respiratory or circulatory system.
Let us now dive to the last phylum of the Triploblastic Acylomate body plan, which is the phylum Gastrotica. So imagine you're exploring the ocean and you come across some tiny creatures swimming around. These tiny creatures belong to a group called the phylum Gastrotica. Now, phylum is just a fancy word for a big group of animals that share certain characteristics. In this case, Gastrotica are tiny marine animals with unique features. Gastrotica are known for their small size, usually ranging from about 0.6 to 3 millimeters long. That's really tiny. Despite their size, they're quite diverse and can be found in oceans, freshwater, and even moist terrestrial environments like soil and moss. One interesting thing about Gastrotica is their body shape. They're like little worms or tadpoles with a flattened body and a head that often has sticky glands and hairs. These sticky parts help them from moving around and catch their food, which is usually small parts like algae, bacteria, and other tiny organisms. Another cool thing about Gastrotica is their reproductive system. Most species are hermaphrodites, which means they have both male and female reproductive organs. This allows them to reproduce with any other member of their species they encounter. Let us now dive into the Pseudocoelomate body plan, Achelminthus. Imagine you're exploring a pond or digging in the soil, and you come across some tiny worm-like creatures. These creatures might belong to a group called the Achelminthus, which have a body plan known as a Pseudocoelomate. Now, Pseudocoelomate sounds fancy, but it's not too complicated. It means these animals have a body cavity called a pseudocoelom, but it's not completely lined with mesoderm tissue like in false coelomates. Instead, the body cavity is only partially lined with mesoderm, leaving some organs floating in a fluid-filled space. Achelminthus include various tiny animals like roundworms, threadworms, and rotifers. Despite their small size, they play important roles in the ecosystems. Some are parasites, living inside the bodies of other animals, while others are free-living, scavenging for food in soil and water. These creatures have simple body structures, often with a tube-like shape and a digestive system running from mouth to anus. They don't have complex organ-like systems like more advanced animals, but they're well adapted to their environments. One interesting thing about Aschelminthis is the reproductive strategies. Many species can reproduce both sexually and asexually, depending on environmental conditions. Some produce eggs that can withstand harsh conditions, ensuring the survival of the species. Overall, Aschelminthis, with their pseudocoelomate body plan, may be small and simple, but they're important players in ecosystems around the world. Let us now move into the first phylum of the pseudocoelomate body plan, which is the phylum Rotifera. Imagine you're looking through a microscope at tiny aquatic creatures swimming around in a drop of water. Some of those creatures might belong to the phylum Rotifera. In this case, Rotifera are tiny, multicellular organisms found in freshwater environments such as ponds, lakes, and rivers. One of the most fascinating things about Rotifera is their unique anatomy. They have a wheel-like structure near their heads called a corona, which they use to create currents to bring in food particles. It looks a bit like a spinning wheel or a rotating crown, hence the name Rotifera, which means wheel bearers. Rotifers are also known for their incredible reproductive abilities. Some species can reproduce both sexually and asexually. In fact, under unfavorable conditions, some species can produce eggs that are resistant to drying out, extreme temperatures, and other harsh conditions. These eggs can remain dormant for long periods until conditions become favorable again, allowing the rotifers to hatch and continue their life cycle. Another interesting thing about Rotifera is their role in aquatic ecosystems. They're important grazers, feeding on bacteria, algae, and other small organisms. And they serve as a prey for larger aquatic animals like fish and insects. Overall, Rotifera are tiny but mighty creatures that play important roles in freshwater ecosystems. Their unique anatomy and reproductive strategies make them fascinating subjects for scientists and nature enthusiasts alike. Next is the phylum Caenorhyncha. Beneath the surface, there's a whole world of tiny creatures, and some of them might belong to the phylum Caenorhyncha. Caenorhyncha are tiny marine invertebrates, which means they don't have a backbone, and they're found in ocean sediments all around the world. Now, these little critters have some unique characteristics. One of the most striking features is their segmented body, which is divided into three main parts: a head, a trunk, and a tail. They kind of look like miniature armored worms or caterpillars. Another interesting thing about Caenorhyncha is their outer covering or cuticle, which can be tough and spiky. It helps them protect them from predators and abrasions as they move through the sediment. Caenorhyncha also have a mouth surrounded by a ring of retractable spines, called an introvert, which they use to capture and eat small particles of organic matter and microscopic organisms in the sediment. When it comes to reproduction, Caenorhyncha have separate sexes, meaning there are males and females. They reproduce by releasing eggs and sperm into the water where fertilization occurs, and then tiny larvae develop before growing into adults. Overall, Caenorhyncha may be small and often overlooked, but they're essential members of marine ecosystems, helping to break down organic matter and serving as food for larger creatures. Let us now move into the phylum Nematoda. Imagine you're in a garden digging into the soil. As you dig, you might come across tiny, thread-like creatures wriggling around. These creatures might belong to the phylum Nematoda. Nematoda are commonly known as roundworms, and they're found almost everywhere on Earth, in soil, freshwater, oceans, and even in the bodies of other animals. One of the most remarkable things about nematodes is their incredible diversity. There are thousands of species, each adapted to different environments and lifestyles. Some nematodes are parasites, living inside bodies of other organisms, while others are free-living, scavenging for food in soil and water. Nematodes have a simple body structure, with a long cylindrical shape and no segments. They have a mouth at one end and an anus at the other, and their bodies are covered in a tough, flexible outer layer called a cuticle. These creatures play vital roles in ecosystems. For example, in the soil, nematodes help break down organic matter, recycling nutrients and enriching the soil. Some nematodes are also important predators, feeding on bacteria, fungi, and other small organisms. When it comes to reproduction, nematodes can reproduce sexually and asexually, depending on the species. They lay eggs which hatch into larvae before developing into adults. Despite their small size, nematodes have a big impact on the world around us. They're essential for maintaining healthy ecosystems and are also of great interest to scientists studying everything from ecology to genetics. And the last phylum of the Pseudocoelomate body plan, the phylum Nematomorpha. Imagine you're walking by a pond or stream and you notice something strange wriggling in the water. It might be a creature belonging to the phylum Nematomorpha. Nematomorpha are also known as horsehair worms because of their long, slender bodies that resemble strands of hair or threads. These creatures have a unique life cycle. As larvae, they're parasites of insects like grasshoppers, crickets, and beetles. The larvae live inside the insect's body, feeding on its tissues until they're ready to mature into adults. When it's time to reproduce, the adult nematomorph breaks free from the host insect and emerges into the water. Here, they mate and lay eggs, continuing the life cycle. One of the most fascinating aspects of nematomorpha is their ability to manipulate their host's behavior. As larvae, they can influence the behavior of the insect host, causing it to seek out water where the adult nematomorph can emerge and continue its life cycle. Despite their strange and somewhat creepy appearance, nematomorpha plays important roles in aquatic ecosystems. As adults, they're part of the food web, providing food for fish, birds, and other aquatic predators. Overall, nematomorpha may be lesser-known creatures, but they're an intriguing part of the natural world, with their unique life cycle and interactions with other organisms. And that is all for the Pseudocoelomate body plan.